He was the man every television viewer loved. Scruffy, loyal, and sharp-tongued, yet warm at heart. Ken Curtis, the unforgettable Festus Hagen from Gunsmoke, built his fame on honesty and humor. But away from the dusty streets of Dodge City, Ken carried heavy grudges and quiet disappointments. In his final years, he spoke about 5 Hollywood names that haunted him, people he respected, clashed with, and in some cases could never forgive. What drove such a gentle man to such bitterness? The truth, as it turns out, reveals a side of Ken Curtis few ever saw. A boy who grew up behind bars. Ken Curtis's life began in one of the most unlikely places for a future Hollywood star, a jailhouse. He was born Curtis Wayne Gates on July 2, 1916 in Lamar, Colorado, a quiet town on the edge of the Great Plains. His father, Dan Gates, served as the sheriff of Bent County, which came with a peculiar family residence, a small apartment directly above the county jail. For most children, bedtime stories were about cowboys and outlaws. For Ken, the outlaws lived downstairs. The clang of metal doors, the shuffling of boots, and the low murmur of inmates became the soundtrack of his childhood. His mother, Nellie Sneed Gates, worked as the jail's cook, preparing 3 meals a day for both her family and the prisoners. Ken often stood beside her as she passed trays of food through iron bars, watching hardened men thank her quietly. Those moments stayed with him, not just as a memory of hardship, but as a lesson in compassion. He grew up seeing his parents balance authority and kindness, justice and mercy, duty and love. That balance would later define both his personality and the characters he played on screen. Life in Lamar during the Great Depression was not easy. Money was tight and entertainment was a luxury few could afford. But even in such an environment, young Ken found his joy in music. He sang at school, in church choirs, and eventually at local gatherings. His voice, warm, deep, and soothing, caught people's attention early on. Yet dreams of stardom seemed impossible in the hard times of the 1930s. His parents, practical and protective, encouraged him to pursue something stable. Following their advice, he enrolled at Colorado College, intending to study medicine. For 2 years, Ken tried to convince himself that the path of a doctor was his destiny. But inside, he felt trapped, not in a jail this time, but in a life that didn't belong to him. He would often sneak away from his dorm to perform at small campus events, and the applause he received rekindled something powerful. Eventually, he made the bold decision to abandon medical school and follow his true passion, music. By the early 1940s, Ken's gamble began to pay off. He joined Tommy Dorsey's orchestra, one of America's most famous swing bands. Shortly after Frank Sinatra left, stepping into Sinatra's shoes was a near impossible task. Yet, Ken handled it with confidence and grace. Under Dorsey's mentorship, he learned professionalism, discipline, and stage presence. It was Dorsey who advised him to change his name from Curtis Wayne Gates to something catchier. Ken Curtis was born, simple, strong, and memorable. From that point on, Ken's voice could be heard across America. He toured the country, recorded songs, and eventually joined the Sons of the Pioneers, one of the most beloved Western music groups of the era. Through hits like Room Full of Roses and Ghost Riders in the Sky, his voice became part of the soundtrack of American life. But even as success arrived, Ken never forgot where he came from, the quiet sheriff's apartment above a jailhouse where he learned humility, decency, and the quiet dignity of doing the right thing no matter the cost. That early environment, the mix of law, hardship, and humanity, molded him into the man he would become. It gave him empathy for the downtrodden, strength against adversity, and a rare authenticity that would later shine through every role he played. From the cells of Bent County to the bright lights of Hollywood, Ken Curtis carried that small-town moral code with him, and it became both his greatest strength and at times his greatest burden. Hollywood's golden era and private wounds. By the mid-1940s, Ken Curtis had carved out a place for himself in American entertainment. After his breakthrough with Tommy Dorsey's orchestra, his rich, velvety baritone became familiar to radio audiences across the country. But Ken was never content with one stage. He wanted to blend his love for music with storytelling, something that could touch people more deeply. That desire led him to host Chuck Wagon Jamboree, a 15-minute syndicated radio show in Los Angeles that ran for more than 130 episodes. Each broadcast was a mix of cowboy songs, light banter, and moral tales, a perfect preview of the grounded, folksy personality that would later define his screen persona. While radio kept his voice in millions of homes, Ken began feeling the pull of Hollywood. America was falling in love with the silver screen, and Westerns were fast becoming the nation's favorite genre. His natural charm, Western upbringing, and musical background made him an obvious fit. In 1945, he began appearing in musical Westerns, taking small roles that blended song and story. It wasn't long before he caught the attention of one of Hollywood's most powerful figures, director John Ford. Ford was a legend known for discovering and molding tough, authentic actors like John Wayne and Henry Fonda. When Ford met Ken, he saw a young man with something rare, real cowboy roots, and a voice that could melt even the hardest audience. Ken quickly became part of Ford's informal family of actors and worked on a string of classics, including Rio Grande, The Quiet Man, and later The Searchers. Working under Ford, however, was both an honor and a trial. The director was brilliant but brutal. He ruled his sets with military discipline, often humiliating actors to get what he wanted. Ken learned to stay calm, professional, and never talk back, lessons that would serve him well later during his long tenure on Gunsmoke. It was during this period that Ken's personal life became entangled with the Ford dynasty. In 1952, he married Barbara Ford, John Ford's daughter. On paper, it looked like a perfect Hollywood union, the rising actor and the daughter of one of cinema's giants. But behind closed doors, the relationship was complicated. Barbara had grown up under her father's immense shadow, and Ken often felt like an outsider at family gatherings filled with Hollywood elites. The marriage lasted over a decade, but it was never truly peaceful. The pressure of being tied to such a powerful figure, combined with Ken's growing career demands, eventually took its toll. They divorced quietly in 1964 without public scandal, just quiet fatigue on both sides. Long before Barbara, however, Ken had already experienced heartbreak. His first marriage to actress Lorraine Page in 1943 took place when both were young and hungry for success.